Today we're going to have a look at how to create a 3D document, and we're going to use our axonometric plan cutaways in order to be able to explain this and explain the rationale behind it. Now, ironically, even if we had been using our view 3D view options white model view, just because we're using a white model view in the 3D doesn't mean that it would create the same representation in our 3D document. So what we're going to do first is go into the 3D document settings. Just like everything in ArchiCAD, there's a standard setting, and we want to make sure that the standard setting is the way that we want to view that. So let's go into 3D document, right click, 3D document settings, and in order to get this to work well as a presentation, I want to make it effectively like our white model render. So I don't need to worry too much about my 3D projection or my floor plan projection at the moment. The only one that I'm really focused on is the model display. Now, because this is a 3D drawing, the cut elements aren't all that important. The uncut elements are the elements that we're mostly seeing. This is slightly different because it is a 3D cutaway, but generally speaking, you'll see what I mean. So in order to represent this well, I don't want to use own surface colors. That's what we use when we're creating presentation elevations and sections. In this instance, we want to use uniform surface because we're trying to create that sketch look where we've got, in this case, a white background and a pen or a color, a black in front of it. So we're using uniform surface, and I'm not going to tick anything else for this one. Under the uncut elements, again, uniform pen color, and I'm using white here just to make the background white. I also want a uniform pen for uncut elements, so that's ticked, and I'm going to choose pen 2. Now, you'll see that all of my first pens are black. That's very intentional, but they've got different thicknesses. Now, we don't need to worry about pen thicknesses when we're creating 3D views because there's no real line thickness in a 3D. But when we're creating a 3D document, it's a vectorial drawing. So we do care about the thickness of the line because the thickness of the line as we choose will represent if we're printing it or publishing it. I could choose to turn on my 3D vectorial hatching, and I could choose to turn on my transparency. For now, I'll leave those off, and I can turn those on later if I want. Sun shadows I do want turned on. I'm using a 50%. I like that representation. It could be something else. It could be a line. It could be 100% solid, and I'm going to choose pen 1 for that one. I'm not going to do hidden edges. That would be a wireframe. I want it to be solid. Everything else will be okay, so I'll press OK. I haven't created anything yet, I was just creating the settings. Now I've already got these created, but I'm going to do this again for you. So let's go right click, new 3D document from 3D. And what I'm trying to create is a cutaway drawing, and so I'm using multiples in this case. So let's start with that. Cutaway plan. And what level is this? This is our upper ground floor, UGF. Create. So we see that this has created a drawing. And I can zoom in with this one, and we can see that it's got a thickness. Now this is at a scale, it has a scale, 1 to 100. If I was to change this to 1 to 50, it actually makes those line weights thinner, just like if we were doing this with a floor plan or section. Now, does this mean anything? Sort of. Scale doesn't mean anything when we're dealing with a perspective, but when we're dealing with an axonometric, we can actually scale an axonometric drawing. So, in a way, it does matter. I'm going to keep with 1 to 100 at the moment, and we want to create multiples of these. So once we've created one, I'm then going to go back to my other cuts and do the same thing. I'm not going to zoom in or zoom out with this one because it's important that it's based on the same drawing. So back to my 3D document, and I'm using the same settings that were already preset, so I don't have to customize them. And I'm using the same naming system just so I can identify them, but I'm just changing this one to lower ground floor. Create. So again, to clarify, it looks a lot like my white model with shadows, but the advantage is that it's vector based. Let's continue this just a little bit more. This is my first floor. And now finally, this is my roof. Now that all of these are created, I can of course update the settings. So with the roof, I could choose to turn on a vector or a hatch so that we could see a roof cladding if we wanted to. Let's just keep it really simple for now. But the big advantage that what you're going to see of this soon, let's just go back to one of the earlier ones of this. Let's go down to the bottom, is that I can, with a 3D document, be able to, let's make it red now so it's clear, draw projected lines. So I can represent a line, and of course I could draw multiples of those, or I could drag multiple copies to start drawing lines to show how my stories match up. So hopefully you can see where I'm going with this. What are we creating? We're creating an exploded axonometric drawing where we're going to be able to take all of these 3D documents and be able to represent them all above one another. And because they're saved as an axonometric rather than a perspective, we can separate them because the perspective never changes in terms of its height. We're going to save that for next time, but we're heading in the right direction. So if you want to follow along, we're creating 3D documents. These are created from sectional cutaways, or in this case, floor plan cutaways, using our 3D cutaway options.